The 90th edition of the Roy's Boys podcast starts right now.
It's not about you. It's about that name on the front of your jersey.
And ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. Pushes into Hubert Davis. 8 seconds. Davis trying to get free. Over to Fox. Fox, baseline. Up for the shot. Good. Off the glass. Oklahoma calls timeout. But the game is over. The game is over. Carolina has upset number 1 Oklahoma.
With 20 seconds left to play. Goes back to Michael Jordan. Jumper from out on the left. Good. 63-62. 13, 12, 11. Georgetown with one timeout. Fred Brown looking. Oh, way to Worthy. Worthy 5. The Tar Heels are going to win the national championship.
Rebounded by Weber. Michigan out of timeout. Weber front court. Carolina with foul. He takes the timeout. They're out of timeout. Technical foul. Technical foul. Brown gets it into Williams. Here comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out the head. Long outside shot. Short rebounded. It's over. Carolina has won the national championship. How about them Tar Heels? They are the national champions.
That's it! Make room for 2017. The Tar Heels are the national daggum champions.
That's what it's all about right there. That's on the floor. That's on your shirt. That's in your heart. That's why we're all here.
This is the Roy's Boys podcast with your host, Joshua Marlowe.
Hey everybody, welcome you into another edition of the Roy's Boys podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services, and today Anthony and I are going to take a look at the matchup with Gonzaga. Anthony, this is going to be as tough a game as Carolina is going to play all year long when you factor in opponent, you factor in the environment, and you look at the health of Carolina. They're going to be without Cole Anthony. He'll be out 4 to 6 weeks. He underwent arthroscopic knee surgery Monday to repair a partially torn meniscus, so the freshman point guard is out for the foreseeable future. And there aren't many times that we go into a game thinking Carolina doesn't really have a chance to win unless a lot of things go right. This feels like one of those few times where unless Carolina plays out of the world or Gonzaga has an off night, it's going to be a long night for the Heels.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, and let's be honest. It's not only just because of the struggles that Carolina has had. It's also because Gonzaga is a really good basketball team. Not only really good, battle-tested as well. This is a team that is finishing up a stretch where they played Washington and Arizona, two teams that were ranked inside the top 25. So this is not a team that comes in having not played anybody, which is usually always the biggest concern around Gonzaga when it comes to ranking them in the, where we're going to put them seeding-wise in the NCAA tournament. This year it's a little bit different. They've gone out and played some people. We've started to see that pick up over the last few years. And yeah, right now, you just combine the fact that Gonzaga is playing about as well as they have probably since they went to the national championship back in 2017. And the fact that Carolina is probably playing about as bad as they have since at least 2014, maybe 2010. This doesn't stack up to be a good game for Carolina at all. And the fact that it is in Spokane makes it even worse.
Yeah, the Kennel is one of my favorite environments in college basketball. It's an underrated environment because how many times do you see Gonzaga on national television? It's very rare. And so Carolina to battle that the ticket prices for that game was through the roof to watch Carolina play in that building. The thing about Gonzaga most years, and especially this year, they're one of the few teams that match up well with Carolina with the size on the interior. And like we saw that we played them in the title game in 2017. They had a big man in Karnowski that could go with Kennedy Meeks when they battled on that final Monday night. And their offense is one of the most efficient offenses in all of college basketball. They average 86 points per game. That's fourth in the country. Their offensive rating is third best in the country at 117.6. They kind of look like what Carolina only looks like on paper in terms of how much they score and how efficient they are. and Carolina just isn't there. They put 6 guys in double figures. I mean, they're basically kind of like Carolina just out west with the way they play and how they want to play.
Well, that was always a comparison that a lot of teams or a lot of people like to make to them whenever they were one of the teams that was on the rise and was still waiting to prove that they were this really great team. Now I feel like they're kind of a known commodity in college basketball since they went to that national championship in 2017. I think people kind of know that, and yeah, I mean you look at this team, you got 6 guys in double figures. They go it's about 7 or 8 deep. It just kind of depends on what's been going on with them because they've had a lot of injury issues. They had some injury issues out in the Bahamas, but it seems like they've gotten relatively healthy. And yeah, now I mean they're a team that not only will they cause problems for you inside, they have the ability to knock down outside shots, and you combine that. I mean, it seems like since that 2017 season, we're just looking for them to get better year in and year out, and they're coming close at this point. I mean, this year, if you look at this team, I mean, this might be the best all-around Gonzaga team that they've had under Mark Few.
Yeah, there's a very good chance that this could be the year that they cut down the nets in April with as wide open as college basketball is this year. They've got size. You got Philip. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. Yeah, the big man from Serbia, 6'11", 225, so he's got some height, got some weight. He's giving Gonzaga 15 and 8. And then you go down to Drew Tim, and he's 6'10", and he's giving you 10 points and 5 boards. I think that's where this game's going to be won and lost is Carolina needs not just Garrison Brooks or Armando Bacot to play at a high level. They need both of them. And that's especially right. This was before Cole Anthony got hurt, but now that your best playmaker is out, you need to play inside out. But you need to play inside out with both guys producing. We saw in Wofford that Garrison Brooks had his best offensive game maybe of his entire career, and Armando Bacot lumped to a 2 of 14 from the field against Wofford.
Well, that's been one of the other real issues is that when one of them plays good, the other one doesn't. If you could get them to both play well at the same time, you have a feeling that Carolina could probably break that streak of not scoring over 80 points, and you would feel like this offense would run a lot more proficiently. And, one of the stats that I saw earlier today on Twitter, the guy that you're going to want on the floor to get the ball inside is Jeremiah Francis, because I forget what the exact ratio is called that they were going off of, but he's a guy that's going to get it to his interior paint guys. And that's what you need to do at this point for Carolina. Those guys have to be your best players on the floor because they're your best offensive players, period, on this team right now. Nobody else that you're going to look at, you're going to say, okay, we have a ton of trust in them. I think Brandon Robinson, 16 points, a career high in the game against Wofford, maybe is showing you something in the backcourt, but he's still struggling efficiency-wise shooting the basketball. Your big men inside, they're getting the high percentage looks. The key is now you've got to finish them. This team went 9 for 23 on layups in the game the other day against Wofford. They have got to be better against Gonzaga, and if they're not, it could be a really long night.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I agree I believe Francis is the guy that best fits you getting the ball inside off of dribble drive. I think because he's a bigger guard, he's stronger with the ball. Mm-hmm. I made a comment on Sunday. He took a drive to the basket, drew 2 defenders and dumped it off for a layup. That was the strongest drive we've seen from a Carolina guard all year, and it was in Game 10. Kind of shows you what he's capable of doing. But I also think for Carolina in this game, we've talked about as bad as this team has been on offense. You've yet to score 80. You've yet to shoot 50% from the field. I still think the turnaround starts defensively, because if you can start forcing turnovers and getting out into transition, you're going to open up this offense a little bit. The problem is you mentioned Gonzaga's seasoned. They're a veteran group. They're not going to turn the ball over. That means Carolina's got to be able to force them into mistakes, whether it's whenever they trap effectively. You've seen Roy Williams go with full court pressure at times to no avail. I don't know how they get turnovers, but they've got to start forcing them.
Well, I think one of the other things is not only do you have to get turnovers. You've got to force them into these bad shots that are going to result in the rebounds and chances to get out in space and run. That's the biggest issue for me right now with what they're doing defensively. We've seen just way too many ill-advised doubles, and it leads to these wide-open threes. And they're going to knock down a good amount of those. We've seen the last two games that we've played, Virginia and Wofford have both struggled to knock down some of those open shots at times. Wofford hit 14 of them because they took 40 of them, which is still not all that efficient. In this game, this kind of feels like a game where if you give them open looks, Gonzaga is going to knock them down, and you could be in trouble a lot quicker than you were against Virginia and against Wofford. So I think if Carolina, because for the most part, would you agree with this? When they haven't doubled, for most of our guys have done really good with being in one-on-one situations. I mean, you've had some moments where some of the guys have gotten blown by at times, but for the most part, they've been pretty good head-up defending.
Look, this is Carolina. They're not known to be great defensively. They've never been great defensively under Roy Williams. That's not the way we play basketball. But when they've stayed disciplined in the half court, that's why they were able to beat Oregon. That's how they beat Alabama. Because their defense was good enough to offset an offense that was still in flux. You've seen the last couple games. The Virginia game, the defense wasn't bad for 40 minutes. It was bad for 2 to 3 minutes at a time. Same thing with Wofford. And you allow them to hit 2 or 3 shots and it opened the game, and you're not good enough right now to come back from 8 to 10 points down. And that's the thing that they've got to be able to do. The doubles don't, I don't know if it's something that Roy Williams is calling for, if they're just doing it on their own. They've come at ill-advised situations. They've got to get better in pick-and-roll situations. I've never seen a team this bad this late into the year at just basic switching on a ball screen.
Which is all communication. That's where it all begins.
Exactly. And I think that's what's been the more frustrating thing is that the struggles defensively have been in the simple areas of the game that not only the freshmen and sophomores are struggling, you're seeing Garrison Brooks and Brandon Robinson get miscommunicated when they're hedging on a ball screen. Well, that's a senior and a junior. That shouldn't happen.
Right.
And I think that's where the frustration has come from Roy Williams, because what else can he do? He can tell them all week in practice, you need to communicate, but he can't communicate for them. He's not going to put them in a zone. We know that. So you've just got to be strong enough and confident enough to, okay, I'm going to take this guy, you take that guy, and let the defense work itself out. Because when Carolina gets scrambling, that's where you saw Wofford get so many looks, was because we had one guy having to run from one end of the court to the other to close out on a three. Their shooters are just too good. They're going to make those.
Yeah, and you talk about going into zone. I think there's a lot of people that have brought that up. Problem is you're not communicating well right now. What is the biggest thing when you run a zone, especially in basketball? Communication. You've got to know what area you are supposed to have at what time. And you have to do that by talking to all of the other 4 guys that are on the court. And we have not seen that at a high level so far this year. We talked about on the recap podcast for the Wofford game, it's about getting these guys to say that they're going to buy in, because it just doesn't feel like, from watching them, that they're buying into the message that this coaching staff is trying to put out there for them, because they're making the same mistakes every single game. That's the biggest thing. And look, they're going to have a chance because, look, here's the thing at this point. I guess maybe these last 3 games, maybe you had some pressure on you. In the Smith Center against Ohio State, people thought, okay, you could come in there, beat an Ohio State team that was good, but is, still growing as a team. Chris Holtman has his team competitive, but do we really think that they're a top 5 team in the nation? Probably not. Not just yet. Against Virginia, you felt like, okay, well, they, were against the odds the first game of the year against Notre Dame in a weird situation, having to play a conference game to open the season. They responded. Will they be able to get it on track against a Virginia team that's struggling offensively as well? And then against Wofford, you had the pressure coming in where people were saying, yeah, you can't lose this game. You've lost 2 in a row. This is a team that you should beat, no problem. Now you've got no pressure on you. Nobody outside of maybe a few Carolina fans expects you to win this game. Most people expect you to go in there and get hammered. like just about every other unranked team does when they go into Spokane. But I mean, this is your opportunity